My case study was done on Matthew Diaz, the man who put himself in the middle of prisoner detention issues. The purpose of my research is to analyze and describe his acts of espionage, and to basically examine early life history and connect it to possible psychological issues. Matthew Diaz was born in 1965 in Gary, Indiana. He was one of 6 children, 3 of which were biological, and later on 2 of them were step-siblings. Diaz's parents divorced at age 6, leaving the children independent of their parents and more dependent on one another. For a while, the children were sleeping in one single bed all together, cooking their own meals and doing grocery shopping once the food stamps arrived. By the 7th grade, Diaz had already attended 9 different schools and continued to bounce around. He moved to California to live with his father, who was then remarried to a woman with 2 children of her own. According to Golden, publishing in the New York Times in 2007, Diaz referred to living in California as sort of paradise. This was the start of things really falling apart. Diaz was approaching the end of his 9th grade school year in California when he answered the door one afternoon to find sheriff's deputies outside with search warrants. His father, Robert Diaz, was a suspect of an unusual amount of deaths at 2 different hospitals. Being a new employee at both of these hospitals, he became the prime suspect. Patients had been killed by large injections of a commonly used heart drug, lidocaine. Robert was the only nurse known to be on duty while these patients died. After his father was arrested in November of 1981 and charged with the murder of 12 patients, Matthew Diaz was left to fend for himself and ended up dropping out of high school. Now, at age 16, Diaz moved to a San Bernardino motel with a 28-year-old woman who later became his new girlfriend. He also got a new job as a dishwasher for the next year. At age 17, he received his GED and began serving in the Air Defense Artillery Unit in Western Germany. With his father sentenced to death, Diaz was trying anything and everything to be a lawyer and somehow help with his father's case. While stationed in Germany, he got an associate's degree in law enforcement studies and a bachelor's degree in criminology. He later quit the army and decided to become a police officer in Georgia. In 2004, Diaz found himself settling in Guantanamo. In Guantanamo, there was some question about how the prisoners were being treated, such as interrogations and abuse. His father's experience began to really shape Diaz's view of the law. He felt that there were many people who weren't getting fair trials. While being discreet about his views on this subject, he was frustrated in knowing that if he didn't step up to do anything, no one else would. He became interested in helping people that no one else seemed to care about. He wanted to see a change and also wanted to be one to make a difference. Barbara Olshansky, a lawyer, wrote to the Pentagon official overseeing detention policy asking for names of detainees so that attorneys could offer to represent them. Matthew Diaz was copied on this draft response and knew that administration would never consider granting this request. Previously, the Supreme Court had upheld the Guantanamo prisoners' rights to challenge their detention habeas corpus proceedings. While the detainees may have been granted their day in federal court, administration fought for them to still have no legal rights. On January 14th, the last night of Diaz's tour, he printed 551 names of men who were held by the United States. He put their names, as well as other information, inside a Valentine's Day card and addressed it to Barbara Olshansky and sent it to the New York offices of Center of Constitutional Rights. Once word of the card got out, everyone thought of it as being a government trap. It did not occur to some of the lawyers that someone inside the detention camp headquarters might be trying to help them. There was little sign that any member of the military were defying their superiors. There had been episodes in the past that suggested more about the high security atmosphere of the camp, but not anyone going against how the prisoners had been treated. This was different. No one had ever taken the law into their own hands like this. Olshansky, confused, called the chambers of federal district judge who was hearing the Guantanamo suit and told them that she received some information that might be relevant to their case. The court responded with instructing her to send it over to the Justice Department instead. The FBI began to investigate and had little difficulty narrowing down the list of possible suspects. Diaz had printed the documents from his own computer. He bought the Valentine's Day card at the base exchange, and he left his fingerprints on the list of names. On May 18, 2007, a panel of 7 naval officers convicted Diaz on 4 of 5 accounts. He was sentenced to 6 months imprisonment and dismissal from the military. He became the only United States serviceman to be convicted and imprisoned for an act of insubordination. According to Golden, publishing in the New York Times in 2007, Diaz claims that he still believes he tried to do the right thing. It was just in the wrong way. Diaz clearly had a tough childhood. He was young when his parents separated and was most dependent on himself and his siblings. Living with just their mother, the children were physically and emotionally neglected. During these years of a child's life, the most important thing for them is to build structured, caring relationships. They need a secure environment in which they feel safe. Matthew Diaz did not have this. He was moved around between different homes, attending multiple schools, which affected his attachment patterns. Where nothing had been secure for him, everything that he was once somewhat attached to had been taken away. This makes him vulnerable to commit such acts because he, in a way, became selfless. He was lifeless, emotionless. He said he knew what he was getting himself into and thought of the consequences day after day, but continued to go forward with his plan because it's what he felt was necessary. It's what he believed in. He also said that the things I was exposed to, it just kind of hardened me. Diaz was emotionally disturbed as a child, and it followed him into his adulthood.